Salve e mihi et scipuli, and welcome back to the Ides of Mars. Today, we will be starting a new series focusing on the various factions of the Age of Bronze mod for Total War Rome 2, starting off with the Men of Kemet, Egypt. Despite being the most recognizable faction in the game, Egypt is a very tricky faction to master. Their basic infantry, though fairly inexpensive, lacks the punch and staying power of comparable factions' infantry, like Hatti or Mycenae. Where Egypt comes into its own is through the mastery of mounted and dismounted archers. Egypt boasts the best archers out of any of the major Mediterranean powers, with cost-effective and well-armored skirmishers that can outshoot any foe. Egypt infantry is, well, bad. Except for morale, they are basically useless in all stats. They can either use cheap, but relatively effective chaff, like the Nile clubmen and Nile spearmen, or use the mainline Egyptian spearmen and Egyptian swordsmen. Of the more professional troops, the Egyptian swordsmen are preferable, coming with more armor and attack values. Yet these troops will get absolutely shredded by units of a comparable price from other factions, so it's wise not to rely on them too much. Similarly, the expensive Egyptian infantry are not really worth the investment. They are highly flavorful, but not at all equal to the units of a comparable price. Egyptian range play is where they excel. The Egyptian bowmen are relatively cheap, and have better armor than competing ranged options. Their stats are also flat-out improvements, and even their range is higher than their Hittite counterparts. Your superior archers can force your enemies to attack, letting you choose where the battle will be fought. Your best archer unit, however, are the Nubian bowmen. Heavily armored for an archer, these snipers will absolutely force the enemy to resign the skirmish phase. Often they seem unnecessary, as native Egyptian bowmen can do the job for cheaper. If you expect your enemy to foolishly attempt to out-skirmish you, bring the Nubians. Don't bring Libyan bowmen, they suck. The only thing better than dismounted Egyptian archers are mounted Egyptian archers. Egyptian chariots are phenomenal. They do the job of other chariots better in most regards. Your light chariots are not as tanky as others, but they are cheap and excellent skirmishers. Use them to mop up routing troops and harass the back lines. They can also be used to counter opposing chariots, drawing them farther and farther from the back lines. The Pharaoh's chariot is a flat-out upgrade. It is cheaper than other high-tier chariots, with mostly better everything. It is the only unit on the Egyptian roster to have over 60 armor, and can out-skirmish any major factions. This is the Egyptian chariot. Use it to punish the enemy as they slog through your front line's great morale. In terms of strategy, you're going to want to do as the pharaohs probably did. Throw cheap levies at the enemy while your royal archers do the heavy lifting. Leave the melee nobility to the Greeks. This is the age of chariots. Force the enemy to engage your front line of tar pit infantry, leaving some as sacrifices to the inevitable flanking chariots of your enemy. While the opposing flanking chariots are bogged down, focus your archers, chariot and foot, on them. Once the flanking force is dealt with, you'll be free to maneuver around and use your archers to fire into the enemy's exposed rear. Your infantry will have taken massive casualties, but no sacrifice is too great for the Divine Pharaoh.